Okay, welcome everyone. And we are very happy to have you join us for this seminar titled Queer Demography in Japan, Decentering Universalized Knowledge of Gender and Sexuality in the West, a lecture by Hiramori Daiki, who is an assistant professor at Hosei University. My name is Iris Eason, and I'm a project assistant professor at Tokyo College. And together with my colleague, Shannon Welch, we will be the moderator of today's lecture. This event is part of Tokyo College's Queer and Feminist Movement in Asia lecture series, organized by two of the college's collaborative research groups, which are Mobility and Connectivity, as well as Gender, Sexuality, and Identity. I encourage you to check out the introductory video for this series on Tokyo College's YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. So for today's event, we will start with Dr. Hiramori's lecture and then followed by a designated time for questions towards the end of the talk. And to our audience, particularly those attending online, you are more than welcome to submit your questions and comments at any time during the session via the Zoom Q&A function, which can be found on the bottom Zoom bar. And during the Q&A session, we will first address comments and questions from the in-person audience before moving on to those submitted online. And now my colleague Shannon will welcome and introduce Dr. Hiramori Daiki and to brief you the theme of today's talk.
Yeah, thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Hiramori Daiki, who's an assistant professor in the Faculty of Global and Interdisciplinary Studies at Hosei University. Dr. Hiramori's expertise is in sociology, and he researches gender and sexuality stratification from a queer and feminist perspective using quantitative methods. He's especially interested in socioeconomic inequality based on sexual orientation and gender identity. His research has been published in prestigious journals such as the Journal of Population Problems and Gender and Sexuality. He has also designed and carried out several large-scale social surveys in Japan and holds the Certificate of Advanced Social Researcher issued by the Japanese Association for Social Research. We're honored to have Dr. Hiramori join us today at Tokyo College to deliver his lecture titled Queer Demography in Japan, Decentering Universalized Knowledge of Gender and Sexuality in the West. He will be discussing his findings about the development of questions to measure sexual orientation and gender identity on population-based surveys in a Japanese context. In particular, he will look closely at issues such as heterosexual respondents being misclassified as non-heterosexual, as well as cisgender women selecting other as their gender when this category was meant to capture non-binary respondents. Dr. Hiramori, the floor is yours.
Great. So thank you so much for the generous introduction. I would like to start my presentation. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully it works. Okay, so can everybody see the slide? Okay, so again, the title of today's presentation is Queer Demography in Japan, Decentering Universalized Knowledge of Gender and Sexuality in the West. And I would like to start my talk by sort of looking at attitudes towards same-sex sexuality in Western societies. So if you take a look at this word value survey, which is a famous survey, if you take a look at this question, do you think homosexuality can never be justified, always be justified, or something in between? Of course, you would see a lot of countries that are known for understanding LGBTQ issues like Sweden, Germany, Canada, Australia, and so forth. But interestingly, if you take a look at the number, the mean value of those who say that homosexuality can be never be justified or always be justified, Japan's number is 6.7. So it's kind of similar to the number in France, which is 6.8. And if you take a look at countries like United States or Italy or Portugal, then actually the average point is lower than Japan. Also, if you kind of zoom into East Asian countries, Japan is the most tolerant society when it comes to same-sex sexuality. So again, Japan's score is 6.9 mean score. And if you take a look at other countries, most societies have lower score compared to Japan. And then surprising for some of you, I think this is surprising, but the Taiwan's point score is 4.4, which is much lower than Japan. Even though Taiwan has legalized same-sex marriage, and Taiwan is known for a society where known for an LGBTQ sort of understanding society. And this is just a kind of side note, but there's in addition to Japan, there's another country where the region is colored in green, which means the society is more accepting, and that's Vietnam. And so the number is 5.6. So Vietnam is another more or less tolerant society within Asia, although it's outside of East Asia. So that kind of gives people the impression that, oh, like Japan is a LGBTQ friendly society. Many people are understanding LGBTQ issues. However, if you look at same-sex marriage, in fact, same-sex marriage is not legalized in Japan. And however, there are many efforts to sort of introduce same-sex marriage in Japan. And also, in addition to that, some local municipalities have started, introducing same-sex marriage, same-sex partnership certificate systems. So, the Japan's situation is changing, but as of right now, same-sex marriage is not legalized in Japan.
Professor,
yes.
Sorry, I think you may want to stop the presenter's project and just.
Do you need the presenters?
No.
Okay.
Okay, this
is this better?
It
Yes.
seems
Okay.
it seems they don't see the Thank you.
Okay,
Sorry
okay,
to
okay,
interrupt.
good. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. So to kind of sum up, there are two conflicting views on LGBTQ issues in Japan. So one view is to see Japan as an LGBTQ friendly society. And for example, one big difference is the absence of sodomy laws in Japan. And in many other countries, this kind of laws existed. So this is one of the big difference, big differences between Japan and many other countries. And also, only 1% of people in Japan believe in Christianity. And of course, Christianity is historically known for being very hostile to LGBTQ issues. And in addition to that, if you take a look at texts in Buddhism or Shinto, which is Japan's indigenous religion, then you can easily see same-sex sexual relation depictions of same-sex sexual relations and cross-dressing practices and so forth. But again, at the same time, if you take a look at the current social institutions, Japan is the only country in the G7 that does not legalize same-sex marriage or civil unions. And on top of that, a survey has shown that more than 85% of LGBTQ workers in Japan do not show or disclose their sexual orientation or gender identity at the workplace, which suggests that even though surveys like World Value Survey shows that Japan's public opinion towards same-sex sexuality is more or less accepting, but there's something that makes it difficult for LGBTQ workers to fully disclose their minority status. And also, when it comes to extant research on LGBTQ issues in Japan, I think there is a sort of growing number of qualitative studies that are looking at LGBTQ people in Japan, especially in recent years. But if you take a look at quantitative research, so quantitative research looking at LGBTQ people in Japan is extremely limited. So then that's kind of what I study as a scholar. And before moving on to today's main topic, I would like to discuss three types of surveys to sort of understand LGBTQ people in Japan. And so the first method is population-based or nationally representative surveys. And then the second one is surveys targeting LGBTQ people. And then the third one is web surveys targeting LGBTQ, both LGBTQ and non-LGBTQ respondents. And I'm going to talk about each of these survey methods one by one. So the first one is population-based or nationally representative surveys. As the name suggests, because the sample is randomly drawn from the population of Japan, you can generalize the results to the whole population of Japan. However, this type of survey tends to focus on attitudes towards LGBTQ people. So what the general population is thinking about LGBTQ people. And so it kind of, this type of surveys rarely ask about the respondents' SOGI, so sexual orientation and gender identity. And the picture shown in this slide is one of the few surveys that asks about sexual orientation and gender identity. And then this is a nationally representative survey. So this is kind of a rare survey in some way. And later I'm going to talk about this survey a little bit. And then the second type of survey is surveys targeting LGBTQ people. So as I kind of mentioned earlier, for the case of population-based survey or nationally representative surveys, of course, the number of LGBTQ respondents included in the data is going to be limited. So rather than that, some scholars have conducted surveys to specifically focus on LGBTQ people. And by conducting this kind of survey, you can really focus on the needs and experiences of LGBTQ people that cannot be fully captured when you only use population-based surveys. However, because typically you only focus on LGBTQ people when you collect data, you cannot make a statistical comparison with non-LGBTQ people. However, as I kind of mentioned earlier, because this type of survey specifically target LGBTQ people, you can gather many LGBTQ respondents. So for example, you can analyze the difference within LGBTQ people rather than making a comparison between LGBTQ people and non-LGBTQ people. And this picture shown here is a survey conducted by Nijiro Diversity, which is a non-profit organization to promote workplace LGBTQ equality. And then the last type of survey is web surveys targeting both LGBTQ and non-LGBTQ respondents. And for this type of survey, typically you're using web monitors who are registered for a web survey company. And because of that characteristic or feature, the results from this type of survey cannot be generalized to the whole population of Japan, for example. However, this is a web survey, and typically survey companies have really large number of web monitors. So if the scale is really large, then you can gather data on both LGBTQ and non-LGBTQ people. And so these are the three sort of major survey methods to gather statistical data on LGBTQ issues or LGBTQ people. So with that, I would like to move on to a brief sort of history of queer demography in Japan. And I think when it comes to sort of LGBTQ related studies in Japan, there's a sort of stereotype that in the US or other Western countries, there is an accumulation of LGBTQ studies, and scholars in Japan are probably importing those findings from abroad, and then apply theoretical perspectives or other concepts that they introduced to the Japanese context. So I think that's a sort of stereotypical image of LGBTQ studies in Japan. However, I would like to argue that, as I kind of wrote in this slide, the first academic paper looking at queer demography in Japan was published in 2011. And this was just one year before the publication of Queer Methods and Methodologies intersecting queer theories and social science research, which was one of the earliest publications that kind of looks at what we would term queer demography. In addition, the first nationally representative survey that asks about both sexual orientation and gender identity in Japan was conducted in 2015. And if you take a look at other countries, again, I kind of draw an example from the US, but the General Social Survey, which is one of the most famous surveys in the US, actually started asking about gender identity in 2018. So 3 years after we conducted this survey. And it should be certainly noted that the GSS, first started asking about sexual orientation identity in 2008, but still, in 2018, they first started asking about gender identity in this GSS survey. And so I think that this is really important to note. But when the research team conducted this first nationally representative survey asking about sexual orientation and gender identity in Japan, they just included a question about sexual orientation and gender identity without thinking too much about how to properly ask sexual orientation and gender identity, especially when the majority of the respondents are probably non-transgender and then heterosexual. So as I wrote here, we need more kind of rigorous methodological studies to properly measure sexual orientation and gender identity on population-based surveys in Japan. And that led to the establishment of this research project, Demography of Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity, building a foundation for research in Japan. And so what we did, first is to look at what other countries, did when it comes to SOGI measurement. And so for the case of sexual orientation identity, this following item was recommended. So do you consider yourself to be heterosexual or straight, gay or lesbian or bisexual? And from this question, you can see that they don't offer any explanations or definitions of those sexual orientation categories like gay, lesbian, bisexual, heterosexual, and so forth. And the reason is that because they're interested in measuring sexual identity. So if we include the definition of those categories, then people, for example, who have same-sex sexual attraction, but if they do not identify as gay or lesbian, if the definition is included, then they may still circle, gay or lesbian. But if they don't have an identity, if you're measuring sexual orientation, you don't want them to circle gay or the lesbian, category. So that's why they didn't include, any definitions or explanations of these terms. And then for the gender identity, what's typically called a two-step method was recommended. So in the first question, you would ask about people's sex assigned at birth. So what sex were you assigned at birth on your original birth certificate? And then the options are male or female. And then in the second question, you're going to ask about gender identity, and then so man, woman, or other. And if the answer to these questions are different, then that respondent would be classified as transgender. And then if the answer to these questions are the same, then we would code them as cisgender. And then so that's kind of what people in other countries have discovered. And so here's our research question, which is, are the findings from previous studies applicable to countries with legal, religious, and cultural context regarding sexual and gender minorities distinct from Western countries such as Japan? For example, the absence of sodomy laws and things like that. And so in order to answer this question, we conducted focus groups and pilot surveys. And we conducted focus groups targeting both LGBTQ people and also non-LGBTQ people as well. And this is a flyer we used at the Kansai, what's the title? Kansai Rainbow Festa. So we kind of distributed a flyer and then recruited participants of this, of the group interviews. And then, so here's the question we came up with. So please circle the number that you think is closest to you. And one thing you will immediately notice is this phrase, not gay, lesbian, etc., which is included in the first heterosexual option. And so when we kind of talk about the SOGI measurement issues, many people sort of talk to me and say that, oh, like if you are interested in asking about SOGI, you have to be careful so that sexual minority respondents can accurately respond to the question. And that's the kind of comment I get in many cases. But what we found out from the focus groups is that for LGBTQ respondents, because most of them already know these terms like gay, lesbian, bisexual, and so forth. So they don't have any difficulty responding to this question. But actually, what we found out is that there are many heterosexual people who found it difficult to sort of answer this question because many of them do not know the term heterosexual. And so even though they are, they would be classified as heterosexual, they don't know the term heterosexual. And because of that, some of them selected, as for example, like other. And that's a problem, measurement, issue. And so that's kind of what we called, the heterosexual problem in some LGBTQ respondents mistakenly select the heterosexual category because LGBTQ people are the minorities, so it doesn't pose a lot of big issues. But if a tiny bit of heterosexual people who do not know the term heterosexual mistakenly select other categories like I don't know, bisexual or other, then that poses a lot of issues. And so because of this fact, we have to be really careful in making sure that heterosexual people basically heterosexual people select the heterosexual option when they see this question. And that's the heterosexual problem in the demography of sexuality. And then when we conducted interviews, we found that adding this phrase not gay or lesbian is really helpful for those heterosexual people who do not know the term heterosexual. Because the way they identify with their sexual identity is not like I am heterosexual or things like that, but rather I'm not gay or I'm not LGBTQ or I'm not that kind of person. That's how they sort of identify or how they understand their sexuality. So I think this phrase was really helpful. And in some way, this is a sort of empirical support for what David Harpeling kind of said in his book. So this is a quote from his book. So heterosexuality defines itself implicitly by constituting itself as the negation of homosexuality, and heterosexuality then depends on homosexuality to lend it substance and to enable it to acquire by default its status as a default. And then so the acquire by default its status as a default as a lack of difference or an absence of abnormality. So we could say that what we found is a kind of empirical support of this statement. And then we also found another interesting finding, which is again, when I kind of meet with people and then say I'm interested in measuring sexual orientation and gender identity on surveys, a lot of people say that to me that, oh, like if you are measuring sexual orientation, you have to be careful and then you have to make sure that everyone can respond to this survey because of course you're interested in the reason why you're asking about sexual orientation is because you're interested in understanding the lives of non-heterosexual people. But when we added this other option to the original question for sexual orientation identity, there were actually two groups who kind of selected this option other. So one group is, of course, people who are thinking that, well, I don't want to, decide on my sexual orientation identity, or I'm still in search of my sexual orientation. So those, queer or questioning respondents. But also there's another group of people who selected other, which is heterosexual respondents who did not understand any of those terms, like heterosexual, gay, lesbian, and so forth. They also selected other because they don't think heterosexual is the right answer for them. And so in order to make distinctions between these two categories, we have one type of other for queer or questioning respondents, and the other sort of other category for heterosexual respondents. So that's I do not understand the question. And then for the gender identity, we found that rather than a two-step method that is commonly used in Western countries, we found that a three-step method is actually better to capture gender identity. So in the first question, we also, of course, ask about people's assigned sex at birth. But in the second question, instead of asking everyone their current gender identity, we have a question about gender dysphoria in the middle. And only for those who said selected two, so different gender, or three, have a sense of discomfort. Only to those who selected those two categories, number 2 or number 3, we asked their current gender identity. And the reason why we decided to use this three-step methods is because in the wording of both question 44 and 45, the Japanese term used to measure sex assigned at birth and then current gender identity does not distinguish between sex and gender. So also in both of these two questions, we use the term seibetsu. So many people thought that, especially cisgender people thought that, why are you asking the same question twice? So in order to avoid that problem, we decided to include an additional question about gender dysphoria in the middle. And then based on this kind of methodological study, we conducted a representative survey in Osaka City. And of course, this is only representative of Osaka City, so not nationally representative. But I think Osaka City Resident Survey is also one of the first surveys to ask about people's sexual orientation and gender identity. And then that's OCRS is also a population-based survey. So I think this is one of the rare surveys in Japan. And then there are many things we kind of found from this survey, but from a methodological standpoint, there was this really interesting result, which is so we originally thought that those who are in search of their sexual orientation, or who don't want to decide on their sexual orientation would select this category. Don't want to decide, haven't decided. But it turns out that a total of 5.2% selected this category, which is larger than any other sexual minority categories like gay, lesbian, bisexual, asexual, and so forth. So we kind of felt a little bit suspicious about the results we got, and so because of that, we actually did not mention this category when we released the preliminary sort of results of this survey. And so we said that 3.3% of the respondents would fall into LGBT or A, and we didn't mention the fact that there are many people who selected don't want to decide, haven't decided this category. And after the release of this results, we received a lot of reactions from LGBTQ activists in Japan, saying that, well, we think people who selected don't want to decide, haven't decided should also be included as part of LGBTQ. And so because of this background, we came up with this research question for our study 2. And so the question is, can we treat everyone who selected don't want to decide, haven't decided as queer questioning or part of sexual gender minorities? And in order to answer that question, we conducted an experimental web survey in March 2020. And then for this time, we used a web survey targeting registered monitors of a web survey company in Japan. So one sort of big difference from the Osaka survey is that we can't necessarily sort of generalize the results because the target population was registered monitors. However, I think still we were able to find something interesting from this survey. And so in the web survey, of course, we asked, the respondents' sexual orientation. We used the same question that was used for the Osaka survey. And then in addition to that, we also asked a follow-up question for those who selected don't want to decide, haven't decided. And so here are the kind of response options that we prepared. And then a total of 6.6% of the respondents selected don't want to decide, haven't decided, which is not very different from the results from the Osaka survey. And a total of again like 159 people selected this category. So to those 159 people, we asked this question of why you selected this category. And if you take a look at the results here, of course, many people selected, this option. I do not want to, or I do not use labels such as heterosexual, gay, lesbian, bisexual, and asexual, and so forth. And I think that makes sense. And also, there were, quite a bit of people who selected this option. I haven't decided yet, or I'm in search of figuring out. And then also there were some people who selected, I am not heterosexual, but identify with another label such as queer or pansexual. And so one thing we can learn from this result is that, there's a variety of reasons why people, select this category, don't want to decide, haven't decided. But also at the same time, we found another sort of interesting result, which is there were some people who said, I actually mistakenly selected this category. I don't want to decide, haven't decided. And when we asked, individual sort of sexual orientation again, among 12 people who said I mistakenly selected the category, 5 people said I'm actually heterosexual. And then one person said I do not understand the question. And then of course, there are some people who said I didn't understand the question, or I didn't understand the terminology used in the previous question. And the key here is that if you are if you are familiar with the LGBTQ community in Japan, then probably you should know terms like gay, lesbian, bisexual, and so forth. So the fact that many people selected this option, I did not understand the question, probably means that those who selected this option may be potentially heterosexual. And so if we add up those people, then a total of 22% of those who selected don't want to decide or haven't decided may be actually heterosexual. And then in addition, we kind of noticed that more than half of the respondents who selected this don't want to decide, haven't decided option said that I don't want to use labels or I don't want to classify myself. And so we kind of further investigated into this option. And then we disaggregated people who selected this option, don't want to use labels, or by their sexual orientation and gender identity. And if we do that, there are 9, for example, people whose gender identity differs from their sex assigned at birth. And then if, of course, their gender identity is different from their sex assigned at birth, then it makes sense that you don't want to probably use labels that are sort of ciscentric. Also, 22 people said that would be classified into those whose gender identity is the same as their sex assigned at birth. So they are cisgender, but romantic attraction, sexual attraction, or sexual behavior are not necessarily all heterosexual only, which means that for one of the 3 indicators, romantic attraction, sexual attraction, or sexual behavior, at least for one of the indicators, they selected either almost heterosexual, or men and women equally, or almost same sex, or exclusively same sex, or no experience. So if we include those people, then a total of 31 people whose gender identity is different from their sex assigned at birth, or cisgender people who is not sort of fully heterosexual. However, the remaining 51 people said or would be classified as those whose gender identity is the same as their sex assigned at birth, so they're cisgender. And then also, when we look at their romantic attraction, sexual attraction, and sexual behavior, for all of these indicators, they show heterosexual sort of nature. And so, and then we used a lifetime measure to classify people into the following three categories. And so, in addition to 22% of people who selected this category, additional 32.1% may be potentially heterosexual. And so, kind of taken together, what we found is that so there is a variety of reasons why people select this category, don't want to decide, haven't decided. And on the one hand, again, as I mentioned earlier, some of people who selected this category, so 22 to 5.54%, may include people who are currently heterosexual, and they may turn to non-heterosexual in one of the future surveys. But demographers are interested in measuring current sexuality. So for now, I think it's fair to include or regard those people as heterosexual. However, more importantly, on the other hand, it is quantitatively shown that sexual orientation cannot be clearly separated by the categories like heterosexual, gay, lesbian, bisexual, and so forth. But it's much complex and fluid. And I think in general, quantitative methods are not really good at showing the fluidity of sexuality, but still even if you're using quantitative methods, you can still show this kind of complexity or multi-faceted nature of sexuality to some extent at least. And following that, I would like to offer a definition of queer demography, which we kind of came up with a couple of years ago. So we define, of course, this is tentative, but we define queer demography as a discipline that, on the one hand, provides estimates of proportional distributions of SOGI and analyzes demographic characteristics by SOGI to problematize heterosexual and cisgender norms in society, which is what more traditional, I would say, demographers would do. But also at the same time, if you're doing queer demography, then you should also describe normative and fluid moments of the SOGI categories and critically studying the process of how a collection of people is constructed as a population group. So that's kind of our tentative definition of queer demography. So on the one hand, we're interested in showing the fact that LGBTQ people exist, and then sort of showing socioeconomic inequality or health inequality experienced by LGBTQ people. But at the same time, we have to be careful about categorizing LGBTQ people as one monolithic group. So that's kind of what we also have to do as a queer demographer. Okay, so with that said, I would like to move on to the last study that I would like to introduce at least in depth, which is sort of gender question. And so as I kind of wrote here, as public awareness towards LGBTQ issues is growing, some scholars have started incorporating a third category to the gender question on surveys. So for example, man, woman, and then other, which I think is the most popular, third category. Or sometimes, a man, woman, and then unsure, or man, woman, prefer not to answer, or something along those lines. However, the current sort of situation is that methodological studies to investigate what third category should be used to properly capture non-binary respondents are sort of extremely limited. So I think many people are using this third category in the interest of non-binary respondents. They're trying to be inclusive, and they don't want to impose gender binarism. And I think this is really good, but also at the same time, we have to sort of empirically investigate, for example, who are the people who would select other if we add this third category. And so we conducted an additional, in this case, experimental web survey in February 2023 to explore, who are the people who would select, this category, other, as their gender on surveys. And then so here's the kind of latest result from the survey. So in the survey, we asked, people's gender using one-step method, which is man, woman, other. And then we also, asked the same, we also asked gender, but using a three-step method this time. So, we asked basically gender twice. So we can sort of make a cross tabulation of, how they responded to each of these two questions. And I think, again, there's an understanding that, one of the reasons why scholars should, include categories beyond man or woman is to capture, those who do not necessarily identify as a man or a woman. And so there's an assumption that, if someone selects other as their response option, then probably they are, non-binary. However, what we found is that among those who responded other in the first step gender question, actually the majority of them were cisgender women, and 41% were transgender, and then 7.7% were cisgender men. So I think this is something that is different than what people would expect us to see. And so the sort of conclusion that we drew from this result is that just because someone selects other as their gender does not necessarily mean that they are a gender minority. And of course, there are many, I think, reasons why cisgender women would, elect to select other. For example, if they are against, this question at all, like why, are you going to ask gender on surveys? And so if you think that way, then probably you would circle other, as a sort of resistance to this gender question. Some other people, cisgender women would select this option because it's not that they, identify as non-binary, but of course, Japan is, known for a really gender repressive, society. So some, cisgender women would feel really pressured to conform to the, women's like, expected behavior, like norms and things like that. So again, as a way to sort of resist, to that, oppression, some may, select, this other option. And another thing we did is to, so we basically divided, the respondents into three groups because this is a, experimental survey. And so another group is, received this kind of treatment. So for the first, gender question, they, looked at a three-step method question. And then at the end of the survey, they received a follow-up question, gender question using one-step method. So man, woman, or other. And what we found is that, again, just because someone is transgender would be, just because someone is classified as transgender does not necessarily mean that, everyone who's classified as transgender using a three-step method select, other, for example, as their gender question, as their gender. And of course, if you are transgender man, then you would, select man for the one-step gender question. If you are transgender woman, then you would select, women, for the one-step gender question. So I think this is, more or less common sense, but it's important to show that, not all transgender, people would select other, when you ask gender using one-step method. And so using those methodological, findings from, those methodological studies, we finally conducted a nationally representative survey with updated SOGI questions in, February and March last year. And so this is the final sort of, question on sexual orientation identity we came up with. And so you would note, you would see that, we still have this phrase, not gay, lesbian, etc., which is found to be really effective for heterosexual people who do not necessarily identify, with this heterosexual category. And for the gender identity, question, again, we found out that, putting man, woman, other for the gender identity, question might not be, helpful for measurement purposes. So instead of using man, woman, other, we actually decided to use, do not identify as a man or a woman as the third category. And we didn't really check whether this works, better than the other, original category. But we use this category, do not identify as a man or a woman, in order to sort of avoid cisgender women circling the other option. And so we conducted a survey last year, and then one of the things we found out is the proportion of course LGBT, in this case asexual people. And so a total of 3.5% of the respondents selected one of the LGBT or A categories. And again, you will see that the proportion of people who selected don't want to decide, haven't decided, is still quite a bit larger than any other major sexual minority categories like lesbian, gay, bisexual, asexual, and so forth. So we're still interested in trying to see what this means in our study. And we wrote up a summary report of this survey, originally in Japanese, but we also well, I didn't do the translation, but Kairi Shimabukuro did the translation of the survey that we wrote up, and the English version of the summary report is available in the Journal of Population Problems. So if you are interested in what we found, from the survey, National Social Survey, you can take a look at, this report. And from here, in the remaining 12, I guess, minutes that I have, I would like to talk about some of the things we kind of learned, from the data. And so the first thing is I would like to talk about is patterns of same-sex sexuality among cisgender men and then cisgender women. So when it comes to sexuality, I think it's important to understand there are many dimensions of sexuality. And again, like quantitative methods are not necessarily good at capturing that kind of multidimensionality of sexuality, but still we can do some extent. And this Venn diagram shows the relationship between sexual attraction, romantic attraction, sexual behavior, and then sexual identity. So the kind of relationship between different all these three concepts. And interestingly, only 9% of those who showed some sort of same-sex sexuality. So I'm attracted to people of the same gender, or I have an experience of having a same-sex sexual behavior, or I identify as lesbian and so forth. So people who showed some sort of same-sex sexuality. And among those who showed some form of same-sex sexuality, only 9% said, my sexual attraction or romantic attraction is same-sex, and I have engaged in same-sex sexual behavior, and I identify as either lesbian or bisexual. So it's much more fluid than many of people are thinking when it comes to sexuality. And same thing can be said about cisgender men as well. The proportion is a little bit higher than cisgender women, but still only less than 30% would say my sexual attraction or romantic attraction is people of the same gender or both women and men. And then I have engaged in at least one same-sex sexual behavior, and then I identify as lesbian, not lesbian, or gay or bisexual. So I think again, even using quantitative methods, you can show the sort of diversity and fluidity of sexuality, using the survey. And these data, are coming from the Osaka survey, Osaka City Resident Survey. But we are currently working on to sort of do the same kind of analysis using the National Social Survey. So we should be able to report, what the national level situation of these patterns of same-sex sexuality would look like. And then one additional thing I would like to discuss is also this is about the Osaka survey. So for this one as well, we are working on to sort of do the kind of analysis we did for the Osaka survey, but using national Soju survey this time. And so the result here I would like to discuss today is the relationship between sexual orientation and earnings. And so in the US, there's this kind of phenomena called the lesbian premium, which means that lesbian people tend to have a higher income compared to heterosexual women. And many Western countries, see a similar kind of, there's a similar patterns in many Western countries. And so I was curious to see if that's kind of true in Japan as well, because there were a few qualitative studies looking at this phenomena, and most of them said that, well, we don't think the lesbian premium exists in Japan. But most of these studies were relying on qualitative data or community-based surveys. So their claim was not necessarily persuasive. So we used, or I used the Osaka City, resident survey to look at this. And what we found is that we didn't, I didn't find any lesbian premium from the from the analysis. And in fact, so slightly lower the income of lesbian people is slightly lower than heterosexual people, heterosexual people who are assigned female at birth. And then for bisexual people, this is kind of similar to what studies in other countries have found. And so bisexual women tend to have lower income compared to heterosexual women. And also for the case of men, it is known that gay men tend to have lower income compared to heterosexual men, which is known as the gay penalty. And again, I wanted to see if that's the case. And so for gay people, I found a similar kind of results. So gay people's gay men's income is 5.4% lower than heterosexual men. So it's kind of similar to what other people have found. But interestingly, for bisexual people, their income is 7.8% higher than heterosexual men. And for those who know, the distribution of Soji among men, you can easily imagine that the proportion of bisexual men is really, really small. So this might be just a kind of issue of measurement. And so one could argue that this so-called bisexual premium is not reliable, but this is kind of different from what other people have found. So I thought this was interesting. And then also for asexual people, I would like to ignore this category for today's presentation, because the proportion of, or the number of people who selected asexual among men is very, very small. So probably this estimate is not reliable. And one last thing I would like to discuss is the relationship between sexual orientation, gender identity, and mental health. And so mental health, I think, is a big issue among LGBTQ people, and then partly because of that, many scholars have looked at the relationship between LGBTQ status and mental health. And then many people have found that LGBTQ people tend to have lower mental health score or worse mental health compared to non-LGBTQ people. But whenever sort of scholars report that kind of finding to the public, there's always this comment like, well, you found that LGBTQ people have worse mental health than cisgender non-heterosexual people, but you collected your data through community organizations, and then if you collect your data from that sort of route, then it would make sense that people who would who have kind of worse mental health would be more likely to respond to the survey than LGBTQ people who are okay with their mental health. Because if you have bad mental health, then you have a stronger sort of motivation to to kind of let the society know about their situation. But if you if you don't experience any like harassment, workplace harassment, or bullying or anything, then you would feel that, well, I don't have a lot of interest in sort of raising my voice to the society. So there's this kind of bias, possible bias, and then so whenever people report that kind of result, there's always a group of people who said, well, you use community-based surveys, or you use online surveys, and things like that. But we conducted this national SOGI survey, which is a nationally representative survey that asks about individual SOGI. And even so, what we showed is basically compared to cisgender, transgender people's, health situation, mental health situation is bad. If you could take a look at the orange part, that means, this person is having a really bad, situation when it comes to mental health. And then also for sexual orientation categories, if you compare heterosexual with, homosexual, bisexual, or asexual, generally speaking, the score is really high, meaning that bisexual, lesbians, gays, bisexual, asexuals, they have worse mental health conditions compared to heterosexual people. And because this is a nationally representative survey, so nobody can come to us and say, well, it's not population based, or say anything like that. So I think we can by conducting this survey, we can show a sort of persuasive, result regarding, the situation of LGBTQ people in Japan. And so the kind of remaining sort of questions I have is as a kind of queer demographer who is interested in this kind of topic, is that how can we persuade social science researchers or government policymakers to include SOGI as routinely asked demographic information, like age or race and ethnicity, or prefecture of residence and so forth, in national censuses or social surveys. And I think, especially, when the topic of the survey is not particularly related to gender and sexuality, I think many, people who designed the survey are less inclined to include this kind of, SOGI questions. If the theme is related to, gender and sexuality, then probably, those who carry out the survey are probably, I guess, more likely to include this kind of questions. But for surveys that are not necessarily directly related to gender and sexuality, I think it's still important to include SOGI as routinely asked demographic information. And the second question I have is how can queer demographers or scholars who use statistical methods to understand LGBTQ populations in Asia sort of collaborate to decenter universalized knowledge of gender and sexuality produced in the context of the West. And again, in many Western countries, for example, two-step methods is considered as the kind of method to capture gender identity. But we found that two-step methods does not really work well in Japan. And so I think it's really important to show that some of what they argue universally does not necessarily apply to the situation outside of Western countries like Asia. So these are the sort of remaining questions I have. And then also, for those who are interested in reading more about my work, here are the references I kind of used, throughout my talk today. So I think that's the end of my presentation, and I think we're going to move on to the Q&A section.
Okay, so I believe it's about time. So thank you very much, Dr. Hiramori, for answering those questions and for the great presentation. It was a pleasure to have you with us. And a thank you to our audience for listening and taking part in today's session. Please check out our website and social media for more information about our upcoming activities and lectures in the Queer and Feminist Movement in Asia series. Thank you.
Thank you.